Hello, everyone. How's it going? I'm just going to be talking about Valentine's Day today. Um, Welcome to Mr. Holiday's podcast. This show is where we dive deep into literature, history, and culture. I'm Jason, and today we're exploring one of the most famous love stories of all time, Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. With Valentine's Day just around the corner, it's the perfect time to examine how this timeless tale of star-crossed lovers has shaped our understanding of romance and why it continues to captivate hearts today. Let's start with some basics. Romeo and Juliet is one of William Shakespeare's most well-known plays, written around 1595. It's a tragedy centered on two young lovers from feuding families, the Montagues and the Capulets, who defy their parents and society in pursuit of love. The play is based on an older Italian story, which Shakespeare's adapted into a poetic and deeply emotional drama. Despite being over 400 years old, the themes of Romeo and Juliet, love, fate, conflict, and sacrifice remain relevant today. It's one of the most frequently performed plays in history and has inspired countless adaptations from classic films and modern reimaginings like West Side Story. To fully appreciate Romeo and Juliet, we need to understand the cultural landscape in which it was written. During Shakespeare's time, marriage was often more about family alliances than love. Romeo and Juliet's defiance of these traditions made their story even more dramatic, compelling for audiences of the time. So, what does Romeo and Juliet have to do with Valentine's Day? On the surface, it seems like an ultimate love story, passionate, romantic, and filled with devotion. Romeo and Juliet's love is intense and all-consuming, the kind of love often idealized in the Valentine's Day imagery. But if we look deeper, their story is also a cautionary tale. Their love burns bright but ends in tragedy due to impulsivity, lack of communication, and external pressures. In many ways, Romeo and Juliet reminds us that love, while beautiful, requires wisdom, patience, and understanding, qualities that are just as important in modern relationships as they were in Shakespeare's time. It's also interesting to examine how Valentine's Day itself was perceived during Shakespeare's era. The tradition of writing romantic letters and exchanging gifts was just beginning to take shape, and Shakespeare himself contributed to the romanticization of love in literature. He often explored themes of love at first sight, devotion, and the struggle between personal desire and social expectations. During Shakespeare's time, love and marriage were often dictated by family and social status rather than personal affection. Courtly love was an ideal, and the idea of love at first sight was popular in poetry and plays. Valentine's Day, which had been celebrated in some form since the Middle Ages, was associated with courtly love traditions. Shakespeare himself referenced Valentine's Day in Hamlet, reinforcing the idea that February the 14th was linked with romance. In this way, Romeo and Juliet affects both the ideals and struggles of love during that time. While it portrays the deep passion of young love, it also highlights the constraints placed upon lovers by society, a theme that still resonates today. To expand on this, let's take a look at the works of Shakespeare that deal with love. Much Ado About Nothing presents a more playful and witty take on romance, while Othello explores love's darker side, filled with jealousy and betrayal. Compared to these, Romeo and Juliet stands out because of its youthful intensity and the way it contrasts love with inevitability of fate. It's impossible to ignore the impact Romeo and Juliet had on modern pop culture, from Movies like Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, to pop songs and even Valentine's Day greeting cards. The play has cemented itself as the ultimate love story. But is it really? Many people today argue that Romeo and Juliet shouldn't be seen as an ideal love story, but rather a reflection of the intensity of young love and the consequences of unchecked emotions. In modern relationships, communication, mutual respect, and personal growth are often emphasized, things that Romeo and Juliet unfortunately lacked time for. Let's look at some real world examples. Modern literature and films often use Romeo and Juliet as a reference point. Teen dramas like Twilight and The Fault in Our Stars draw upon its themes of young passion, love that faces external obstacles. In contrast, romantic comedies tend to emphasize communication and personal development, highlighting how the perception of love has evolved over time. That said, the romantic language of Shakespeare's play continues to inspire great pictures and poetic declarations of love. Many couples quote lines from the play in their wedding vows, and Valentine's Day cards are often borrow Shakespeare's words to express love and devotion. In today's world, love and relationships look quite different from Shakespeare's time, while the ideals of passion and devotion remain. Relationships now emphasize equality, mutual respect, and emotional intelligence. Valentine's Day has also evolved. While it's still a day for grand romantic gestures, many people celebrate it in different ways. Whether it's through self love, friendships, or appreciation for family members, the commercialization of Valentine's Day has turned into an industry. But at its core, it's still about expressing love and appreciation. What can we learn from Romeo and Juliet today? The play teaches us that love is powerful, but it's also complicated. Passionate love like that of Romeo and Juliet is intense, but can be fleeting. Lasting love often requires patience, communication, and understanding. So, what can Romeo and Juliet teach us about love as we celebrate Valentine's Day? First, love is powerful. It can drive us to do incredible things, but it also requires maturity, patience, and understanding. The tragedy of Romeo and Juliet reminds us that love isn't just about passion, it's about partnership, responsibility, and sometimes knowing when to slow down and think things through. Whether you're celebrating Valentine's Day with a partner, friends, or simply by enjoying some classic poetry, Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet is a timeless reminder of both the beauty and complexity of love. That's it for today's episode. Thank you for joining me on this literary journey. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. And let me know, what's your favorite Shakespearean love story? Connect with us on Facebook or any social media and share your thoughts. Until next time, happy Valentine's Day and happy reading.